Now, it is now official. US President Donald Trump's tariff rhetoric against India was less about trade or policy and more about him nursing a bruised ego, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not reach out to him personally to seal the trade deal and did not do this bidding. And India paid the price with a sky-high 50% tariff with more duties seen to be loading. This was made public by US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in an interview. In a major revelation, Lutnick stated that the long-pending trade deal between India and US failed to materialize, not because of policy differences, but due to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's refusal to speak directly with President Trump. Lutnick claimed that the whole trade deal was set up, but for it to reach its conclusion, Modi needed to call Trump. He said India was given a clear and time-bound window, in his words, 3 Fridays, to finalize the negotiations. However, he argued that the Indian government was not comfortable with this and Modi did not eventually make the call. He added that the US went ahead and concluded trade deals with Indonesia, the Philippines and Vietnam, assuming that India's deal would be completed before those countries. Since there were no calls, US finalized the deal at higher rates, after which India attempted to return to the negotiating table. He added that terms under which India and the United States were earlier close to sealing the agreement were no longer valid. Lutnick's remarks came a few days after Trump said that Prime Minister Modi knew he was unhappy with India's purchases of Russian oil and that Washington would raise tariffs on New Delhi very quickly. Meanwhile, Trump has greenlit a bipartisan Russia sanctions bill, which allows the US to impose at least 500% tariff on India, China and Brazil to curb their Russian oil imports. Kartikeya Sharma, Managing Editor of News9, is on the phone line on this. Kartikeya, there has been a lot of negotiations, a lot of speculations going on as to what led to this impasse. Now it seems that some kind of an idea comes in that it was all about a talk.
See, if you go by the reports that are out, it was more about Trump's ego and less about the trade deal. But what is important here is that Lutnick has disclosed that the conditions under which the India and the United States appeared to close the trade deal is no longer on the table. I quote Lutnick, he says the US has stepped back from the trade deal that we had agreed to earlier. We are not thinking about it anymore. Now, he's trying to contrast the relationship with President Trump enjoys with other European leaders. Now, he went on to say that the Trump was able to conclude deals with Indonesia, Philippines and Vietnam, where the heads of states called Donald Trump. And then he goes on to say that if we even look at the example of the European nations, for example, Prime Minister Keir Starmer personally called Trump and the deal was wrapped up that day and formally announced the next day at a press conference. So basically he expected the Prime Minister of the other or the President of the other country to call him. Now, Trump is also practicing foreign policy for domestic consumption. And that's the real problem when you practice foreign policy for pure play political consumption. Now, in this case, India had to maintain silence because there are certain things you cannot compromise on. Prime Minister Modi could not compromise on the farm security. Indian agriculture is not run by corporates, it's not corporatized, it's not industrialized. The families depend on it, the poorer section of the society depend on it. And then you have the larger issue of seed. If seed becomes industrialized, then you become dependent on corporation. Every time you have to go to them. People do seed farming, they keep the seed with themselves, so they are not dependent on corporations. So seed is something which is part of their heritage. So the model of economy of agriculture with the America practices and the one we have in India are diametrically opposite. That's number one. Now, the secondly is the clash of personalities. Prime Minister Modi, even if I, if say that, one person, a lot of people, naysayers would say that, you should have called him. But then that's not part of the Prime Minister we have elected. That goes against the very nature of Prime Minister Modi. He's not that sort of a politician. I mean to say he has an image, he has a profile, and no politician anywhere can compromise on that. So it's unfair to compare Prime Minister Modi with his Indonesian or Vietnamese or Philippines or the UK counterpart. So that's like chalk and cheese. Now, coming to the fact that what's happening on trade deal, if I go by the report of the statements of Lutnick, that means it's off the table. But that does not worry me because, most of these statements are for public effect to, create pressure on the Indian government. because you are saying things and we are not responding to it because we don't want to get ourselves drawn into a broader conflict with Donald Trump. And we see that he's a very vindictive politician. Look at his statements on Venezuela, look at his statements on Greenland, look at his statement on Cuba, look at his statement on any country that has opposed him. And he has dictators of his choice. So he has problem with Mudro. He gets the country invaded by a special operating officer, the Delta forces. So that's okay, that's for drugs. But then ultimately, the real reason was oil. Stated reason was drugs. The real reason was oil. But Asim Munir is a darling. The guy who perpetrated the Pahalgam terror attack is darling for Donald Trump. He says, "My dear Field Marshal, my dear General." And Asim Munir consolidates, kills democracy in Pakistan formally, creates a hybrid sort of government there, and he is sauntering in Oval Office with Mr. Sharif, who is just standing at the side as a bystander, where Asim Munir, with the ambassador, obviously military appointed, is having the main conversation with Donald Trump. Now, setting that aside, it's an issue. And with the Lindsey Graham tweeting yesterday saying that the 500% taxation cess for those who are buying Russian oil, I think that's a bigger issue for India right now, because if that happens, it's mind-boggling. I'm not saying that the Indian economy is going to crash, but the 25 years of effort, Narasimha Rao, Deve Gowda, I.K. Gujral, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, the first term of Prime Minister Modi, it has all gone down the drain. And the fact of the matter is that Indian and American society are far more closer in terms of talent, to and fro, migration, in terms of tech, economy, ideas, liberal values. And despite that, we are the loggerheads. And we have to renegotiate our ways with the authoritarian systems, leader forever. Russians have been our friend, and, we respect them. But at a societal level, there is no to and fro between India and Russia. It's not much. With China, it's not much. So we have to meander that space now. We have to recalibrate our strategy in context of what the Russians will do. So I think with the closing down of gates at Washington, I think we have to reopen ourselves to a bigger European world, lots of FTAs with them, or lots of FTAs with Southeast Asian countries. So in terms of economy, we can resolve those issues. But in terms of security, yes, it remains a big problem, because American outreach is still very, very important. It's one country which has the capacity to wage war in any part of the world. And that's the fact of the matter. Even the Chinese cannot do it. Despite a very powerful military, they can't even dominate the Pacific right now. Russians, very powerful in Arctic, but they can't be everywhere in the world. But it's only American. So in terms of military, that's the problem in our military project in terms of Tejas, the engines. The engines are being provided by GE. So we are also dependent on that. So the sort of proximity we build over 25 years, the Americans are trying to weaponize that. And it's a lesson to us that we need to again rediversify. We rediversified to the United States of America because we were tired, because, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the parts were a problem with the Russian defense equipment. We went to France, we went to Israel, we went to America. And now, the whole thing has been weaponized. So it's very tragic. But then, that's the world. There are no free lunches. We have to, and we are dealing with a transactional president. The only good thing is that he stays there for 3 years. American Constitution is a laggard. It's very difficult to amend. So I'm sure Trump is not getting a third term. So we don't have to deal with him. But then, a lot of foreign policy experts say that, Trump is also reflecting a bipartisan approach of both Congress and Senate as how the world has to be seen, Instead of being a Trump's approach, I think it has become an American approach. And I think that's the most disturbing phenomena, where American unilateralism is getting married to American retreat. And it makes the world more dangerous place.